Hello and welcome back to the Osceola.com's Seminole Sidelines on Friday, August the 8th. My name is Nick Carlisle, staff writer and recruiting writer for the Osceola.com, joined by head editor Bob Ferrante, and beneath me, the publisher, Jerry Kutz, in scenic Jacksonville. We sent Jerry over to weather the lightning delays and the humidity in Jacksonville over the last 2 days as the Florida State football team has continued what is going to be one of their more important weeks of fall camp. Obviously, their first scrimmage on Tuesday. They're going to have another scrimmage here on Sunday. Jacksonville is always the period of fall camp where Norvell and his coaching staff gets a little bit of an idea of what this staff or what this team rather is going to look like in terms of chemistry and identity. So a big week for Florida State football, and it is a big day for the Osceola.com. Today is the last day to get 50% off on an annual subscription. So 50% off. This is the last day. This is the best time to join the Osceola.com. We are really ramping up now towards the start of the football season, only a couple of more weeks away. Thank you all so much for joining us today for Seminole Sidelines. Obviously, we're going to touch on some of the things that were said in Jacksonville both yesterday and this morning. Odell Hagan spoke to a bunch of Florida State fans, and Jerry was their president as well. And so a little bit on what Odell had to say. And, of course, some of the reactions and storylines, maybe some reading of the tea leaves from Tuesday's scrimmage, their first scrimmage, which did come earlier. When you're looking at a traditional fall calendar, they decided to go ahead and run an earlier scrimmage, try to get the guys out there and see what they have in them. But, Jerry, I'll start with you. You have a wonderful scenic backdrop behind you. Was football practice for Florida State as scenic as the backdrop behind you today?
Let me give you all a good picture of how I'm roughing it here at my friend John and Camille Middleton's home in Jacksonville. It's been really rough. And of course,
you look absolutely shattered and tired and exhausted for sure.
I'm surprised Jerry isn't doing the show from inside the pool. Like, we need a little.
I think we'd get demonetized for that. Jerry, I don't know. But anyways, Jerry, how was Jacksonville? What did Norvell say about yesterday and this morning's practice?
Jacksonville was hot and humid, and they had, Mike prayed for that. And the first day he said he didn't get his prayers answered with the heat, but he did get it with the lightning delay and rain. So I wouldn't call it a soggy field. I think, for the type of field surface it is, it drained okay, but it was certainly wet. And you could see the players after practice were, caked in mud. They had a physical practice on Thursday. And then again today, they were in full pads and were grimy. What Norvell talked about today that I thought was most significant was the physicality. They got into situational drills at the goal line and really put them in a situation where there's no place to go. It's you versus me, nose to nose, toes to toes. And, they got an idea of their physicality, which was the big message coming out of last season, is they had a need to improve that. And so they're obviously, it's a point of focus. I thought it was interesting last night when Odell spoke to the Jacksonville Seminole Club that was, I don't know, kind of my biggest takeaway was, and it's typical Odell. You all know Odell. And Odell's going to tell you like it is. And, he called that his biggest blessing that God gave him was his ability to tell it like it is. And that's the truth about Odell. And I've known him since he was 17, and he's just a straight shooter. He keeps it simple. And it doesn't matter what your scheme is. That was the point Mike emphasized today when I asked about the 3-3-5 defense. He wasn't dismissive of my question, but he wanted to emphasize the point. Doesn't really matter what scheme you're in. Football gets down to physicality and execution. And that's what Odell talked about last night, that he sees that in these guys. And we can get into that more. You all asked some questions. I don't want to ramble. But I do think that it is the theme of what Jacksonville's supposed to be about.
Yeah. I think physicality is something that they really wanted to emphasize in Jacksonville over the last 2 days. Obviously, Norvell talked about it, but you talk about something that came up in the scrimmage, the emotional physicality, players playing emotional. Norvell talked about penalties becoming a problem in that specific scrimmage because they were trying to be physical, because they were playing super high intensity. I think that has showed up over the course of this week. I feel like this team feels it. I feel like this team feels the need to develop that, implement that as best as they can. And I think that's an emphasis for the coaching staff as well. Something that watching Norvell yesterday, Jerry, that came up again as well was the lack of, I guess, for lack of a better term, completed takeaways. He was he had a lot of praise for this team's ability to put themselves in positions to generate takeaways, less kind about their ability to follow through on that. Is this something that, where do you guys fall? And I guess we'll go to Bob with this. Where do you guys fall? Are you more happy that they're putting themselves in better positions to produce takeaways? Or is this something where you would like to see a little bit more feedback that this defense is actually able to produce turnovers? And obviously the caveat is this is only a week and a half of practice. There's plenty of road left to travel here, but this is something that has popped up a couple of times this week. So Bob, your thoughts on that?
I'm a subscriber to the crawl, walk, run, theory of being an athlete, being comfortable in a scheme that you're in, offense, defense. And what stage is Florida State in, to a lot of regards, is to my question. Are they in that walk stage? I think Tony White talked about the 3 blink, 2 blink, 1 blink comment. That was a really good one, after that first scrimmage, where he wants guys to do instinctively and be natural. But I'm not sure they're there yet. I think the coaches are still seeing those baby steps, seeing some positives. I thought Mike Norvell's quote was pretty good. It's probably the best quote we've heard from Norvell in a long time of, this is not PBU, this is DBU. And he wants plays to be made, and that takeaways can change the face of ball games. And I think it was also a reference to last year. It was a defense that was in position to make some plays, forced some fumbles, didn't recover them, probably got some hands on passes and broke up a couple, didn't really get interceptions. It was a very low takeaway type of defense in the big picture for Florida State. So I think it's a lot of different things at play, but I think it's Norvell imploring them to push harder, to be focused a little bit more on those opportunities. But it is a question of mine of where are these athletes within the stage of understanding the defensive schemes that they can then just go out and do with it being second nature.
Yeah, if I may,
Sure.
chime in on that.
Yeah.
A couple of things there. There's a lot to unpack there. I think, for one, they scrimmaged very early in August. And so I think some of the mistakes or lack of execution on things is probably attributable to that you got new schemes. And even though they worked all summer now with coaches, they scrimmaged very early. Some of the points you made, Bob, about and Nick, about the mistakes, the penalties, were addressed by some of the players, and Coach Knight, and he talked about some of those penalties you're talking about were on his guys. I think they had 3 offsides penalties, and he thought it was, as you referenced, just guys wanting to do it, just wanting to go out and play ball, and a little anxious. There's a lot of competition, and so he thought that was really first day enthusiasm in some cases, but you just have to clean it up. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, you're going to be excited against Alabama, and when 80 or 75,000 people, whatever it is, are there, you can't jump off. And so these are coaching moments, whatever the reason is. And then, interestingly, on the PBU, I think Brendan asked KJ today about, were there any more drop passes? Is this PBU? And Kirkland very emphatically said, no, this is DBU. FSU is DBU. And so in a follow-up question I had to him, I asked how the 3-3-5, and this is relevant, is different than the defense they were in last year. And he made a very astute point. I like a man press defense. I really do. I think if I was a defensive coach, I would probably play man press. But when you do that, you put your defensive backs are always with their back to the quarterback when you're in man press. And you're just not going to get interceptions when you play that way, because you can't anticipate seeing the ball coming, right? And it's almost a mistake when you get an interception. The quarterback's really got to make a bad throw. But the way the 3-3-5 is played, KJ said, is they're always got their face to the quarterback, so they can anticipate throws and jump throws. And I know there's fans like cheering to hear that, because man press is frustrating to watch when you're a fan. You can see the ball going at the guy for 3 seconds, and the quarterback has no way to, except if he gets a ball call from another defensive back. But at any rate, I think it's a whole new scheme for these guys to get used to, and where Adam had them and the previous coaching staff, those techniques are completely different. Now you're having to, like Bob said, it's 1 count, 2 count, 3 counts, and they're seeing that ball coming, and I'll bet you their eyes are as big as beach balls. Wow. You know what I mean? And they're already thinking scoring.
Yeah.
And that isn't something these defensive backs have ever dealt with. So I think there's a growing confidence in the scheme that they're being asked to play in, which gives you paralysis by analysis. And then when they see that quarterback throwing it, they got to get used to relaxing and take a breath and go jump it. But at any rate, it's all good. And you want to start hearing about the interceptions. But I know as soon as we start hearing about the interceptions, we're going to be wondering, who was the quarterback that threw the damn thing? We'll always see the glass as half empty, right?
Absolutely. And I think maybe like an undertone of what you said, Jerry, and something that was brought up a little bit by both coordinators when we talked to them on Wednesday. I think the level of competition in this fall camp is superior to the level of competition that there was last camp, in terms of who is fighting for playing time, who's fighting to get on the 2 deep. There have been comments made at times that maybe some of the players that were getting starting looks last year have been leapfrogged by some people that came under them. And I feel like there's genuine competition. Maybe I guess the way to say it is that the ceiling and the floor have kind of come a little bit closer to each other a little bit, to where you're having guys where Tony White alluded to it. I think it was Tony that said you had guys that you're expecting to make plays, not make plays. and you have guys that you're not expecting too much of. I think maybe somebody you could characterize right away and identify here is Jaden Jones, who has gotten a lot of good publicity this past week. You have guys like that are stepping up and using the best of their opportunities to make plays and really impress this new coaching staff and be able to work their way onto the field. Bob, do you get the sense that the competition level is greater this fall than maybe it was last year? Maybe not necessarily in terms of the drive and the want to, but in terms of the talent gap to where you last year felt like you had starters that you felt like you can rely on. It turns out you didn't. Then you had to lean in on your younger players. And now that ceiling and floor have just kind of collapsed and come a little bit closer. Do you agree with that? Do you think there's more competition this year?
I still struggle with, okay, there's going to be a drop off between Darrell Jackson and then Daniel Lyons or somebody else. I think we have to emphasize there is a difference between the first team defensive line and the first team offensive line than the second team. But among, I think, those second teamers, especially on the defensive front, I mean, we're hearing great things about not just Jaden Jones and where he could line up and how far he's come from that knee injury, which was, I think, 2 or more years ago, going back to junior college when he injured that knee, early in his junior college season. You're also hearing about the Desir twins, and that's not just one guy. You're hearing that from linemen, from coaches. I'm always questioning how much a freshman defensive lineman can play, but within this scheme, it's a different scheme. It's a newer scheme to us. What can they offer, I think, is a big question. KJ Sampson, Kevin Wynn. It feels like there's a lot more guys who are in the mix for these very, very, I think, competitive second team jobs. And these are rotational to me. What's that?
McCoy is, I think, a kid that is emerging.
Luane?
Yeah, McCoy.
Yeah, him as well. Bob?
Yeah, so I think we're always going to have questions about this, especially because our access is different this year, spring and then in camp. What we can't see is kind of not going to be able to help us paint a really good picture in our heads. But I like Jerry, what you're saying is we need to see more receivers. And I think there's a very thick second group that's going to challenge the Deuce Robinson, Squirrel White group. I think there's a very big group of linebackers who are this might be the deeper linebacker room than we've seen in prior years. I mean, we've seen good groups with Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune being those two primary guys. Does this feel like a deeper linebacker room, though, overall, in part because you're going to play 3 guys a lot, I think is part of that discussion because they built the roster differently. But it does feel like certain rooms are stacked a little bit better and there's just better competition.
I think running back is one of those rooms in particular. I mean, you talk about what Norvell said in terms of saying he went into that scrimmage on Tuesday nights excited to see who is going to present themselves in that running back room. And it sounds like Usman Kroma flashed. It sounds like Cam Davis flashed a little bit. But other than that, Norvell did his thing where he basically named standout players without leaving anybody out. Just named the entire room. It didn't necessarily come away, at least in my opinion, while listening to him talk, that he got some clarity in terms of exactly how that pecking order is going to look. But I think running back is one of those rooms, and they have gone running back by committee for so many years now. But Roydell, Cam, Sawchuk has been noted as having explosive plays, and I'm starting to buy into stock that we truly may see Kroma early this season, especially after he has been able to present himself in scrimmage where he's doing violent pass protection. That is not something that a typical freshman is able to do. I'm buying stock that we may see him early, but that's just another one of those positions that talking about that I think have greater competition. Jerry?
Yeah, he pancaked the linebacker, according to Knight, and it was a really vicious, not vicious, but a explosive hit. And then today Mike was asked, can Kroma, emerge as a running back, everyday running back as a freshman? And he emphatically answered yes. So that, he definitely is in the picture. There's no question about it.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We're about 20 minutes in on Friday's edition of the Osceola.com Seminole Sidelines. We're going to hear from our sponsor, Alumni Hall, and a little bit of information about the new Osceola, which more and more of you are subscribing and upgrading to the new Osceola. A lot of you coming in recently. Thank you so much for your continued support. We'll be back after a short ad break.
Hey, Seminole fans! Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop.
The Osceola has gone independent, and we want you to join us on the all-new theosceola.com. The Osceola is the place to be for coverage of your favorite FSU sports, as well as the business side of college athletics and your fan experience at Doak Campbell Stadium and around the country. Sign up for the Osceola's daily morning emails. News delivered straight to your inbox 7 days a week. Subscribe to the Osceola for free to get up-to-date news and analysis on everything Florida State. No fluff, no exaggeration, only exactly what you need to know. To get all of the insider knowledge and analysis, upgrade to a paid subscription with 3 different payment options. Take advantage of half-off pricing in July and earn a discount on all Alumni Hall merchandise with your subscription. Annual subscribers get 2 months free, and founder subscriptions earn 2 free memberships to give to friends and family. There's no better time than right now to join the Osceola. Go to www.theosceola.com now to join a leading source for FSU coverage, informing you for over 45 years. And welcome back to the Osceola.com's Seminole Sidelines. My name is Nick Carlisle, joined by head editor Bob Ferrante and publisher Jerry Kutz. The last day for 50% off pricing. You heard it in the ad. That was through July. Jerry's extended it through today. Today is the last day to take advantage of that. Get a wealth of knowledge of Florida State athletics and sports for a really, really great price. Continue to offer your support. And we thank you for everybody that has shown support for this new Osceola as we get underway on this new journey.
Hey, Nick, if I could,
sure.
I want to reiterate what you just said. I want to thank all those people who have already signed on. I mean, it's been heartening to get as many subscriptions as we have so quickly, and the momentum is great. As the commercials, such a great commercial you did, Nick.
Well, thank you. I should get a couple of awards, don't you think?
Awards. I think, yeah, maybe
yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
great acting.
Great. The thing is that you emphasized in that was that if you're a listener, you can sign up for the newsletter free. And every morning, this newsletter comes into your inbox, and it's a good read over a cup of coffee. And there's a free story that's relevant to the football season. There's a lot of little nuggets that are free. There's a number of things you get for free, and I think it's good for at least a cup of coffee. And then if you like what we're doing, then you can upgrade that free membership to a paid membership, and then you get all kinds of other things, as Nick articulated.
Like Jerry Kutz's phone number, which if you want to prank call Jerry at 2:00 in the morning, this is your opportunity to do so. He is a night owl, so he actually, if you do that, there's actually a decent chance that he.
That's the funniest thing. Coach Bowden always had his phone number back when we had phone books,
mm-hmm.
and I don't want to say the number on the phone, but it's committed to memory, and people would call him after games at home. I mean, he's telling me sometimes he gets the drunk calls, from one of the bars in town. They question his play calling and all that, and he takes the call in good nature and And why not? Why would I not give out my phone number? I mean, you want to engage.
Well, I could think of a couple of reasons why not. Maybe more applicatory to 2025 in social media and scams and some of the nasty parts of the internet.
The scams today are just out of this world.
Yeah, but you know what's not a scam? 50% off for the Osceola for your first year with the website. Continuing on with some of the storylines for scrimmage, and this is something that Bob and I talked about earlier today. And I was talking on the phone casually about some other things, and I said, Bob, do you feel like the coaching staff feels like they're behind? And Bob I'm sure will reiterate what he said to me this morning, and this is something that a vibe more so that I got with Gus speaking than I did Norvell. Norvell came to the podium on Tuesday night and said that there was some good, some bad, a lot of things to clean up, something that you're typically going to hear for a first scrimmage, a lot of things to clean up, but you go through the pros and the cons. But something that Gus said, and the way that Gus was speaking about the way that his offense performed on Tuesday night, that caught my eye because it was a repeated thing, and it was the sense that this team may be behind because they lost time in the spring. Of course, there's that tragedy on campus that canceled, I think, 2 or 3 practices. It was either 2 or 3, and then the final scrimmage that they would have had at the end of April. So they did lose a fair chunk of their spring. But in another part of that lost time that they've been alluding to has been due to injury. There were a number of offensive starters, and maybe this whole thing can just be encompassed on one side of the football. I'm sure both sides have had their problems and their struggles, not only through spring, but through summer, now through fall. But Gus seemed to project that this team his offense really needed this early scrimmage to be able to catch up and get some valuable playing time together. It was the first time that all 11, and these new 11 are brand new starters. It's the first time that they were able to get on the field together, get meaningful live reps inside of Doak for about 10 minutes before they were forced to go to the IPF. But it turned something on in my brain. Like, is there the potential for this team to be a little bit behind? Is that a genuine worry that maybe is being overshadowed? Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's always going to be questions. I think a first-year offensive coordinator is always going to feel like he doesn't have enough time to do the job that he needs to do, which is prepare athletes to execute his playbook. That sounds really bland. It sounds like coach speak, but I think ultimately coaches want more time on the field with their athletes. And you've got it now before classes start, but you always had limitations all along. You had the limitations of the spring practice window. That was cut short, again, tragically. You have limitations over the summer window, which is great. It's 8 or 10 hours with a football, with instruction, but no helmets, no pads. It's not 11 on 11. I think Gus wears his frustrations on his sleeve out there for us. And a lot of it's just taking time. It's not the tempo that he wants to see. You want to ask him about Randy Pittman being a guy who's familiar with his offense. He praised, Randy knows this offense as well or better than I do. But when you start hearing about other guys, it wasn't that same type of, they're there already. Because going back to your point, Nick, all 11, and again, this is a wild turnover. 11 new, not new starters, but 11 new to Florida State starters. The continuity is different. The rhythm of the passing game is different. I think there's just so much new so early that I think Gus gave us some interesting insight, a little bit of tea leaves into just what he's seeing and where he wants this team to go. And at the end of the day, too, I think players are going to watch some of these videos on social media. They're going to read some of the stories and hear a little bit of it. And that can be a good thing, to hear that, okay, we've started, we're getting there, but still got a long, long way to go.
Jerry, do you think it's a concern of yours, or is it a concern at all, in your opinion? Do you think that this team has the potential to be behind the sticks a little bit, that there is this need to catch up, or are we taking this at face value? Is this an early scrimmage and an early time in August when traditionally you'd be having your first scrimmage maybe this upcoming weekend as opposed to last weekend? or earlier in this week. Do you think that we should take this at face value, or do you think that there's some catching up to do for this football team?
I think very strongly that this year, no matter how the spring went or how August goes, you've got first-year coordinators with a lot of new players, and you're just going to be behind. I don't think you're going to see the best of Florida State has to offer until we get to week 5, 6, or 7. There's a lot of the offensive line. I've talked to Mark Salva yesterday about that I want him to write, how does a coach build continuity on an offensive line? We talk about it, that these offensive linemen have all played in the SEC and ACC, a lot of experience, but 5 of them got to come together. And how do you do that? And Mark went through it as a player. He's gone through it several times as a coach. And so I want Mark to really try to articulate that. But in addition to that, you've got an offensive line coach who has to not only get his guys together, but be in sync with his offensive coordinator, right? Now, they have continuity because they've coached together for so long. But then you got the other layer of Mike Norvell, who's going to be the head coach, but not the play caller. But how's that going to work, right? There's going to be probably some moments in film rooms or in meetings or on the sideline, God forbid, where, you were the offensive coordinator under Bobby Bowden until you weren't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting to see how Mike handles that and how Gus handles it when Mike's got a play he wants to be called right now. A lot of things with a new coaching staff that are just going to take time. And so, yes, they feel behind. Yes, they are behind by definition. I look at the coach at Alabama. He has a tremendous advantage in that, this is his second year with that staff and whatever continuity he had before that. So I do. And I tell you what, Nick, I really sense that what you saw in Malzahn's face, I see in Norvell's. Mike is always a good morning guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's always, very high energy, positive guy. And Brendan Sonnone and I were kind of, you don't see that now at the practice field. You don't see that same Mr. Positive. And Brendan and I didn't want to do any, amateur analysis of this, but it crossed my mind that in addition to what other things it can be that's on his mind, that he wants to project to his team a sense of urgency. You know what I mean? What did he call it? Desperation. I don't like that word, but
edge as well.
And I don't know. I think he might have learned some things about it last year, mistakes maybe he made with his body language, that that they went into last season thinking they were better than they really were. And it may be the pendulum has swung for him, and he may be overcompensating or adjusting. But no, I definitely see that they have an urgency. They're trying to catch up. They're trying to make a first-year staff not act like a first-year staff. And 41 new players. Most of the guys we've talked about on this show today were names that weren't on the roster last year. Yeah. And so, I think people should come into these first 3 or 4 games with reasonable expectations that it's not going to be perfect. No matter how they try to buy more time between now and that kickoff against Alabama, you can't make up for it in 8 practices. So I don't mean that to sound negative. I just don't. But yes, you guys are both right. Any practice they missed in the spring hurt. Any player that missed practices because of injuries hurts. And they're trying to manufacture minutes. So, and here's the other thing. You've got a lot of guys competing for playing time. At some point, you're going to have to say, this is my 11. You know, and I love you. I love you. But we got to get continuity with this offensive line and this running back with that offensive line, because so much of your running game is timing. You know?
Yeah. It's a double-pronged sword. It's good offensive line play, good chemistry on the line, and good running. Good running.
I don't want to go back 45 years, 46, whatever it is now.
But a long time.
Yeah, Wayne McDuffie, when Wayne, he was offensive line coach at Florida State, but what some of our fans don't realize is he was the offensive line coach at Georgia in 1980 when they won the national championship with a freshman running back named Herschel Walker. And I asked
it's only Herschel Walker.
Only Herschel Walker. But I asked Wayne about that. Was Herschel that great? And he, absolutely, yes, he was. I said, what made him so great? I mean, that you could have played him as a true freshman and won a championship with him. And he said the dude came in to the offensive film room every day and watched, practice film because of that timing factor. If I delay a little bit more, does that give this guard time to make this block on that against that front? And that he was a student of the game, very much a part of their blocking schemes. And so at some point, you're going to have to say to Usman, if he's the guy, you're the guy. And every down you give the second and third and fourth guy is one down Usman doesn't get.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just using him as an example.
As an example, right.
We're talking about it at wide receiver, tight end, on the defensive front at linebacker.
All up and down the roster.
All up and down. It's all. Now, let me say something really positive about that is I'm very impressed. We request these guys to speak, it seems like one guy after the next they roll out there is like central casting in terms of saying the right things and projecting, being locked in and all those kinds of things. I think this team has, you all were talking about the bottom and the ceiling. I think this team has some playmakers that last year's team didn't have. It has some leaders that last year's team didn't have. And that's what I saw in Jacksonville again from a true freshman in Gelsey and from, boy, does he have he's a good-looking kid. What is he, about 6'4",
6'4", 220-something pounds, if my memory serves correctly.
I mean, really, that kid could grow into a tight end he's a good-looking specimen for.
Well, that's what the recruiting service is thought too, but don't tell him that. He's a wide receiver. He's a wide receiver.
Hey, and I love it. And we're likely to split one of our tight ends out there at the slot receiver this year too.
It's a good match, and I think that's something that they absolutely got with two of their wide receivers / tight ends, either Lofton or Gelsey. It's something that aids to the offense for sure.
I would, just to wrap up with that whole diatribe I went on there is I think this scrimmage Sunday is probably that day that you're going to say, okay, boys, who's our best 11?
Yeah, if this was identity week that Tony White said the Jacksonville trip is identity week, scrimmage number 2 could be part of moving week to steal a golf and modify a golf analogy. I mean, you're moving names along a depth chart, and then you're truly 2.5 or so weeks from a game. And you, like you're saying, Jerry, you got to start analyzing who are your ones, who are your twos, how do the reps get divided so that you can build that continuity like running back, O-line, and defensive line, linebacker, et cetera. It goes all the way across the teams, I think.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to touch on before we end the show today, the defensive line, obviously spoke to Knighton in Jacksonville yesterday, Jerry. Spoke to Tony White on Wednesday. Had some good and some bad to say about the defensive line. Defensive line was able to be disruptive at points. They were able to generate a couple of sacks, but there was the opportunity for more. And Tony did lament the opportunity to be getting more. And some of that, I imagine, has to do with the fact that you're going against Tommy Castellanos, which is a pistol in your pocket, for one. Sperry can move too. Jalen King is a guy that can move too. And I think it is worth mentioning, Brock Glenn did not go in the scrimmage on Tuesday night. He was limited for whatever reason. I don't know if he came into fall camp with this or developed over the first couple of days of spring or excuse me, fall. But he was limited in this scrimmage on Tuesday, so he didn't play. Norvell held him back. But I think and I asked Tony this on Wednesday. I said, how do you gauge the ability to be able to produce those opportunities to get the quarterback down in the backfield, but also how do you also weigh the escapability of those quarterbacks and not being able to finish the play? I felt like his answer was a little bit more on the even keel, the middle road, in terms of how he could have responded to things. But it sounds like this defensive line is not only having some production from a number of the guys that have brought in from the portal, your James Williamses, your Deontay McCrae's, who, Jerry, you spoke to yesterday, and his journey to Florida State is a really interesting one. If you want to go and read that story, Bob included that in his notes. That was published last night in the morning email this morning. Really interesting journey from Deontay McCrae. And then he's just one of those guys. But, Bob, I guess I'll come to you. Like, how impressed are you, obviously without the knowledge that we haven't seen it yet, apart from a small period in that first practice, but it seems like not only is there leadership, like we talked about a little bit before, and there's leadership up and down the roster now, it feels like, with some of the guys they brought in, but how impressed are you with the leadership that now appears to be in that room, how it's developed so far, and how they've been able to be a little bit disruptive so far in the first week and a half of practices?
I think there's cautious optimism from a leadership standpoint because you hear that Darrell Jackson is saying and doing the right things. He's not the rah-rah guy, but he's set a tone through the strength and conditioning program. Again, I go back to what we talked about, I think the last show, James Williams, after that Friday practice when Mike Norvell was really frustrated that the middle of the practice had seen a drop-off because of the heat and the humidity and the tempo. James Williams, took it upon himself. He said, I've got to be better in that defensive line room to hold guys accountable. And he said he felt like they got better once they regrouped. So that's positive to hear that there's discussion being had, holding guys accountable. Then you put it back out there on the field. The one thing I would just say about the challenge of these quarterbacks is they're all pretty darn mobile. That's difficult, but they're also wearing the green non-contact jersey. Like you can sack them, you can pass rush them, but a sack is a two-hand touch. It's a, hey, I got you. It's kind of old school backyard, sandlot football. So it's not, you are not.
No, you didn't. You didn't
You're
get me.
sacking to the ground.
Yeah, I'm sure there's moments where maybe it's at Jerry's point. No, I definitely would have escaped that pocket, Coach, 100%. I think just to quickly close on that, I think what you said earlier about this Sunday being the one, and obviously this is your theoretical halfway point, I suppose, in terms of practices. It'll be what? It'll be the 10th or something this weekend, something along those lines. They started on the 30th, so 10 days full of practice. There's obviously quite a bit to go, a couple of weeks, but this feels like a good halfway point or almost halfway point to where I think you start getting a little bit serious. And this is, I think, the scrimmage where Hopefully they get to be in Doak the entire time for one, because that's an underrated part of it. And fans may think, well, why does it matter which field you're on as opposed to another field? First of all, true grass is true grass. You're going to want to be on true grass no matter where you are, as opposed to the AstroTurf in the IPF. But there is nothing that replaces a feeling of being able to be in a stadium, understand what that's going to look like, maybe not necessarily sound like, but understand what that's going to feel like. And obviously coordinators and coaches in the booth and all that stuff.
Yeah, that, Nick, to your point there, the coordinators in the booth and who's going to be on the sideline, that is critical. And it's real easy to screw that stuff up. And I've seen it so many times over my career where, you have bad communications from the box. I mean, you got to test the headsets out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just a lot of stuff. And with new coaches on the staff, it'd be very easy for JP to send the punt block team out or the punt team out, and 8 guys go out there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe one of the guys got hurt here and another guy is. It just, the only way you can get better at that is to rep it. And so I'm sure they'll do a lot of it because some of it is just walkthrough, but a lot of it is you need to have a sudden change, right, and try to get that. We had a turnover, defense on the field. Well, you got guys over at the water bucket or at the training tent or over there talking to JP. I mean, there's a lot to do there. I mean, you can't underestimate. And that's why these coaches are panicked with time, is they know how much a new staff has to absorb.
Yeah. And that is going to be a crucial part of their scrimmage on Sunday, which, of course, we will recap once we hear from not only Norvell, but the coaching staff as well later next week. But that does it for this episode, or this show, rather, of Seminole Sidelines, the Osceola.com Seminole Sidelines. My name is Nick Carlisle, staff writer and recruiting writer for the Osceola.com. That has been Bob Ferrante, the head editor, and beneath me, live from Jacksonville, Jerry Kutz, who is now going to have the
cannonball.
Yeah, I actually, if you wouldn't ruin your laptop, I actually might pay you to see that right now. That would honestly be an Osceola highlight for the end of time. A cannonball in there, and maybe that can be a channel incentive one day. Subscribe to the Osceola YouTube channel, or pay for a membership on the Osceola YouTube channel. You get to see Jerry Cannonball make a mess of himself. Anyways, thank you all so much for supporting the Osceola. Remember, this is the last day to get 50% off for a year subscription of the Osceola. And there are multiple payment tiers, multiple ways to pay. And of course, if you aren't comfortable with that price just yet, do want to reiterate, you can subscribe to the free morning email. You get that every single day. You get exactly what you need to know about Florida State sports right in your inbox every morning for you to enjoy with your morning coffee. So as always, thank you again so much for the support. Nick Carlisle, Bob Ferrante, Jared Kutz. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And, thank you so much for watching, everybody.